what's your favorite habitat? Like, where do you love going? Which environment?
Oh yeah. Great question. I pelagic birding is, like I said, my first pelagic was January last year, so it's been about a year and a half. I've been sort of doing solid pelagics, maybe one or two a month. And yeah, just the unknown of pelagics, just not knowing what is this going to rock up is so the anticipation is just enough to just it. I've just got a constant, you know, flock of butterflies in my stomach thinking about what might turn up every time you go out on a boat. But if I didn't have pelagic birding, I guess I would probably say, I mean, sea watching as well. That's as close to pelagic birding as you can get. But no, I really love the dry sort of western
Mm.
birding. I haven't done a lot of that, but I find rainforest birding, like forest birding, really difficult because the birds like to sort of hide and it's dark. And again, you can't take great photos because it's so dark. But not that that has a lot to do with it. But yeah, it's out in the open, dry sort of desert birding. That's really cool. I'd love to do a lot more of that.
Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome back to the Birding Today podcast after a long hiatus of what is it? About 7 months, 8 months, something like that. Yeah, 8 months by the time this comes out. So I hope you have all been well, and I'm back to take on the podcast again. It's been a long, cold, lonely winter, as George Harrison said, and spring is here, even though it's July now. So it's the middle of winter, really, but hey, what are you going to do? I am kicking off season 5 with James Bennett, who is an incredible guy. Had a great chat with him. It was really good, and I really think that you'll all enjoy this this catch up and this conversation. A couple of housekeeping and just some words about the podcast. I think I'm not going to release them weekly like I used to. I'm just going to release them as they come out, maybe once a month, I think, because I don't want to overwork myself like I did for the past seasons. So probably once a month is the new plan, the new game. But I'm back onto it, and I've got a couple of other guests lined up as well for the next couple of episodes. So, as always, you can reach me on birdingtoday@gmail.com if you would like to get in touch. I do have a Patreon, which I think is still active, so I'll check that. But if you want to support the show, you can. There was another thing I was going to say. What was it? Anyway, I'll remember. Thank you for being here, and it's good to be back in the host capacity for the Birding Today podcast. Enjoy, and I do hope that you will enjoy this episode. I haven't done this for a while, which is why I'm stumbling a bit, but hey, thanks for being here. Let's get on with the show. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Birding Today podcast, where birders come together to discuss the joy of birding. I'm your host, Thomas Doerig. Today's guest was born in Byron Bay, New South Wales, and grew up completely off the grid until about the age of 14, where he was finally introduced into civilization. He's always had a very strong connection to the bush and the land, and as a child he'd go out exploring into the bush, not knowing anything much at all about birds or wildlife. Fast forward to the present day, and he has been photographing birds for about 7 years now, but only really discovered listing and eBird in 2021. He's also obsessed with pelagics, and has done over 20 trips in just over a year since his first pelagic in January 2022. My guest today is also extremely keen on native orchids, frogs, mammals, and all the other stuff, and iNaturalist is almost a daily thing for him as well. On the other side of the coin, my guest today is a professional musician, and has been for 15 years, having released 4 studio albums. He plays a wide variety of instruments and is of course a proficient vocalist, and has toured Australia extensively, supporting one of Australia's biggest names like Ian Moss, Daryl Braithwaite, the Whitlams, Wendy Matthews, Russell Morris and Diesel. He's also opened shows for international artists like Canned Heat and Newton Faulkner. So, let's jump into it, and please welcome James Bennett on the show. How are you, James?
Hey man, I'm doing well. Thanks for
That's
having me
good. Yeah, no problem, no problem. It's a pleasure. And thanks for being, the #1 guest for season 5 after the longest hiatus of the show.
on. It's an honor.
Well, thank you very much. Let's jump right into it, man. So, as you know, the central topic of the show is the joy of birding. So, what aspect of birding brings you the most joy?
Yeah, I love this. I listen to all your podcasts a lot when I'm a musician. I'm traveling around all the time, lots of time on the road. So yeah, I've listened to all your episodes, and I love hearing everyone's why they're interested in it. And I guess for me, when I play music and playing in front of people and crowds and wherever I may be, it's quite overwhelming at times, and I guess pretty sort of quiet. I'm a quiet sort of a guy, and the attention is kind of a bit overwhelming at times. So I like to sort of get back to basics and get in the bush and just clear my thoughts and just be alone with nature. As I grew up that way, and I kind of can go back to my childhood when I go looking for birds in the bush. But there's so many parts to it. Like I'm a crazy list keeper. I love taking photos, looking at the birds, actually looking at the birds. Like there's so many parts to it that I just love every part to it, and when you travel, there's different birds. Local lists, Australia lists. I've got a few different lists. Every little part of it just makes me feel good inside, and I'm addicted to it. I can't wait to just keep, every time I get a spare chance, just get back out there and keep looking. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's interesting. I want to go back to something you said before about you've got so much attention from everyone. It's partly, and I guess mostly, because of your music side. So would you say you're an introvert?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's been forced. An introvert that's been forced to, sing in front of people, talk in front of people, and which is funny because I feel like I'm quite good at doing that, but as soon as I step away from like a stage, I'm just ready to just go back and be on my own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I think, it's interesting. I'm quite introverted as well, and like, I don't mean this in a wrong sense or in a rude sense, but people drain me a lot.
Oh yeah.
And social interaction demands a lot from me.
Yeah.
And I can feel that. So for me, going out into the bush, and being away and being alone in the bush is so restorative, isn't it? It's there must be something, and it must go back to our evolutionary past when we were always in that environment, I think.
Yeah. Well, they say that's the thing with introverts is the socializing. Too much socializing sort of sucks the life out of you. But with extroverts, all the socializing gives them energy rather than taking energy away from them. So I guess we sort of suffer in a way for that, but in a good way, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, there's loads of different things. I'm going to turn the aircon off because I don't know if you can hear that. Here we go. And yeah, so tell me, you mentioned that's how you grew up. I'm very interested in this. So you said that you grew up off the grid. Talk us through that.
Yeah. So I was born in Byron Bay, and my parents lived on an off the grid property sort of west of Nimbin, Lismore sort of way.
Oh yeah.
I'm not too sure. I think my parents were both at the time quite interested in just being self-sufficient and living off the land, and just exactly what being off the grid is all about, just not having to pay electricity bills or all that sort of stuff, or when the world ends, be just left with that sort of a thing. But there's some sad parts to that story as well, which I don't know if we'll go into later, but my dad was really just, I don't know, it was mainly my dad wanted to sort of isolate us from the rest of society because of his views and his beliefs in the world.
And what were those beliefs?
Oh, just mostly that just, the government was corrupt and just we couldn't trust anyone and all that sort of stuff. He to make a long story short, he ended up sort of losing the plot, and he kind of got a bit sort of mentally ill, and to the point where my family had to kind of run away from him. So it's a bit heavy, but yeah, we sort of got away from that, and and I'm glad, because otherwise I might not have been a musician, or wouldn't have learnt to surf, or gotten into birding. So yeah. And what was the original question?
Well, it just about being off the grid, and
Yeah.
how that got you close to nature as well, because
Yeah, that's right.
that
Yeah.
goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Like if you're away
Yep.
and working the land, and being a bit more socially isolated, I suppose.
Yeah.
That brings you closer to nature, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So our little property we lived on, this off the grid property, was literally bush, and my dad had built this shack. We lived in a shack until I was about 14. I hadn't used a PowerPoint, or had a proper hot shower, any of those sorts of things. We had like this old army chufa that you had to boil the water in this big tank, and me and my two brothers and one sister would all have to share the same hot bath water, because we could only heat it up once, because we had to conserve everything, and things like that. But we were just in the bush. The house was literally in the bush, so I didn't necessarily know what I was looking at when I saw birds or anything, but I would just be really curious, and that sort of kid that just went and just climbed trees all day, or like started clearing lantana just to like make a track in the bush. I was just a full-on bush kid. So that's when I've come back to it now, as an adult. There's so many connections that I just, smells and things that I just associate with being a kid, and brings back all the memories. So I love it.
Yeah. Smell is very powerful for that, actually. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
For sure. Like different fragrances in the bush, like things come to mind for me, like, rain in a eucalyptus woodland.
Yeah.
That comes, exactly
Yeah.
what that smells like,
Yeah.
So what about your interest in birds specifically? What was it that sparked that sort of birding mind?
Yeah, so I don't know if I mentioned before, I got into surfing when I was about 14. Bodyboarding, I mean, when I say surfing. And there was a point in my life where I thought that was all I was going to do with my life, and be on the tour and do all the comps and all that sort of stuff. But I quickly realized there wasn't much money in that, and I'll be honest, there's people that were a lot better than me at doing that. So, and I still do it, but yeah, me and my mates would just go on surf trips everywhere, which is really similar to doing, crazy bird trips, getting up super early and, hearing the dawn chorus or whatever. We'd get up super early and go and freeze our asses off in the water and get nice offshore winds for good waves. But I discovered photography through surfing, and I would, I got a relatively good camera to sort of shoot my mates surfing, and I ended up just being, taking photos of them rather than my intentions of having them to use my camera and take photos of me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just got really used to, surfing's a lot of really fast movements, and the capturing of something that's moving really quickly was a real thrill for me, especially like birds in flight. I associate that with someone doing like a big cutback on a wave or something. You need a really fast shutter speed. And when I started, every now and then I just point the camera towards a bird. I wouldn't know what it was, but I'd have that same sort of, the settings you need for birds in flight is roughly the same as what you need for shooting fast surfing. So
interesting. Yeah.
it slowly just went into that, and I just started sort of looking at birds more. And I guess the one thing that really triggered it was I was actually going to take photos surfing one day, and saw a channel-billed cuckoo, and it just dove out of the tree in front of me. And it was, I'd never seen one before, I must have been like 20, and it just dove into the trees, and I was just like, what the hell is this thing? And like everyone else, I thought it was a pterodactyl or something at first, and started trying to ID it, and went down this track where it took me like, I wasn't on any Facebook pages. I didn't have a bird guide, had no idea how to ID a bird properly. And yeah, it took me probably 3 or 4 months before I actually knew what the bird was. And then, yeah, I just wanted to do that more. I wanted to identify birds more and work out what else was out there.
Yeah, so good. The channel-billed cuckoo. I think I've said on this podcast before that at one point it was my favorite bird. So epic.
Oh yeah,
they're epic,
yeah,
man.
Cool.
Oh,
yeah,
they're so epic. Oh, everything about them, everything.
Very cool.
So you mentioned like, because obviously birding has lots of different things to it. As you mentioned, the field guide. different types of gear, networking with different people, Facebook pages, eBird, of course. So how did it sort of develop from there? Did you meet other people? How did it sort of get the ball rolling after that?
Yeah, I'm not sure how, but it might have been just purely me looking for ways to share my bird photos, and I think I might have found like, oh, it might have been just Bird Photography Australia Facebook page or something,
Mm.
which I'm no longer in. As I've kind of restricted the amount of pages I'm in, because there was one point where I was in about 100 different bird pages, and I had to just narrow. It was on my feed, so I just had to narrow it down to just the core ones, which now I'm just on the birds of the Hunter and Central Coast, which, because I'm living in Newcastle, that's my local sort of area. The New South Wales Rare Bird Alert. There's probably about 5 or 6 that are just real targeted ones that I feel I need to be on. But yeah, I got onto some of the bird pages, met some people while out birding. Yeah, and just talking to people and slowly just discovering what eBird was, and I was like, okay, that's like something I could get around, and yeah, and I wished I got onto it earlier.
Yeah. We'll get onto that a little bit later. Yeah, the eBird's massive. So you could say that you entered the world of birding through photography.
Definitely, yeah,
Yeah.
with associations with loving nature as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Birding Today podcast. It's great to have you with us. If you're enjoying the show, don't hesitate to leave a positive review on whichever podcast app you're using at the moment. This really helps with getting the podcast up in search results and reaching more people. Thank you, and back to the show. And so now that you are a birder, and you know everything about being a birder, or like everyone keeps learning, but you're well into the hobby. What do you think makes a good birder? This is a classic question of the show. What makes a good birder?
Yeah, it's not something I've given too much thought of, but yeah, I guess just knowing calls. I think if you're just a local area and you're not sort of interested in traveling too far away, just being really on top of what's around locally. Like a lot of others have said on your show, it's the knowing the calls, and yeah, just knowing all the easy birds so you can tell when something stands out. Yeah, hear a different call that you haven't heard before, or being able to tell the difference and say, hey, that shouldn't be there. What's that? And being able to actually go and target and look for what that is.
Mm-hmm.
There was a long point for a while where I don't know why, but I would hear something I'd never heard before, and not realize that if you followed that call, you could eventually see whatever that was. It just didn't occur to me to do that. I know it sounds stupid, but yeah, I think it took other birders doing that for me to be like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You kind of got to go and chase and look for that bird wherever it may be calling from, so in order to see it. So that was pretty cool, and such an easy thing. So yeah, for new birders or whatever, I would suggest that learn your calls and yeah, figure out what stands out.
I think a call is really cemented in your brain when you see a bird making that call.
Yes, for sure.
That for me anyway, that was like, oh, okay, right, and something in your neural connections click, and it's like, oh yeah, that's that bird, and then you remember that time that you saw it make that call.
Yes, even to this day, I will be birding with someone, and I'll hear a new call, and they might know what it is, so they'll say, oh, that's this bird, and you'll be like, okay, but that association with actually seeing it call doesn't pop into your head, so you don't really, it doesn't really stick. So yeah, actually seeing it calling is a big help for it to just cement itself in your memory. Yeah.
Is there anything to be said for learning? They call them, they call it armchair birding or whatever, like learning from home and like trying to listen to calls, from eBird audio.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, like, because I did a bit of that, especially when you're prepping for a trip or something, and you want to get familiar with calls, or like you're going to move somewhere and you're going to see new birds and hear new birds. But there's nothing like experience in the field, though, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I have to say I have done that. If I've gone on a trip or something, I have sat there with the app, whatever app it may be, and just played the calls till I was familiar with them, just so I was sure I wasn't going to miss anything. But that always happens. You still miss things, and but yeah, just doing that research, listening to the calls on eBird, or just seeing generally what's in a certain area that might be traveling to, just because you might not be aware of something that may be there, and you come home and you're going, oh, I didn't even try to look for this bird, that sort of a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, doing your research, definitely.
for sure. Yeah, yeah, and I think the all of this and thinking about what makes a good birder, like it's a loaded question, because you could say that there are different types of birders and therefore different ways of being a good birder. But
Yeah.
but that's maybe open to debate. Like, for example, one of the topics I had down, which again is a staple of the show, is and I think I know where you reside in this arena, is the binoculars versus camera. So when you're out, when you see something, do you instinctively go for your binoculars or for your camera first if you don't know what the bird is?
Yeah, for sure. Look, yeah, like you said, everyone has their own preferences with that sort of a thing. I came into it with the camera. I've actually had binoculars, not owned any, but had them and used them, and I've just not been able to use them as well as what I can use my camera. I feel like to be able to quickly to know how to quickly take a shot, I feel like that's a big part of it as well. If you're not familiar with your camera, or you're a bit fiddly or whatever, and you're not super quick, you might stuff it up. But there's so many times where I can remember, if I hadn't have just put the camera up, got a shot, I wouldn't have ever picked out what it was. It's just too quick. And a lot of birds that I've probably added to my life list are purely because I was like, what's this? Bang, got a shot, and I've been able to look at it later. And sometimes you might think, just in the back of your mind, oh, it might be this, but look at the photo and you go, oh no, it's actually this.
Yeah.
So I think personally for me, I feel like camera is better, especially on a pelagic, when birds just disappear so quickly, to be able to just get that shot. And 10 people on the boat call something, and then you look at your photo and you say, hey, no,
Yeah.
10 of yous are wrong. I've got a photo right here, that sort of thing. But in saying that, yeah, there's nothing like just sitting and looking through the scope at a bird that's just sort of not flushing, or like not going somewhere super quickly, and just being able to take it in. And I think that's probably more of the argument that people that use bins have, is it's that you can't just sort of see the detail and appreciate the detail while you're looking at the bird, which is understandable. But yeah, I do that through my camera.
Yeah, there's two different sides to it, I think. I guess one of them, do you ever feel that there's a danger that you're chasing the shot and not the bird?
Yeah, sometimes.
If that makes sense, like, yeah.
It definitely makes sense. I think with eBird, I know, I guess I have a bit of perfectionism or whatever. I love to have. I mean, there's no bird that I have seen that I haven't got a photo of. And I
Wow.
think that's purely because I bird with my camera. And I like to have I get a healthy sort of a competition within myself to maintain that, and to not have a bird that I've seen that I don't have a photo for. So yeah, and I have a weird thing where I kind of don't really tick a bird unless I have a photo of it. Doesn't have to be a good photo, but yeah, I have to have a photo for myself to tick it.
Wow,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. So what if you're wandering the wilds of Southeast Asia one day and you come across, what could it be? Anything really, and your camera runs out of battery, but you get a great visual. What would you say? You can see the
Yeah.
bird very well, and you know that's
Yeah.
what it is, but your camera dies on you because of the humidity. Let's say.
Yeah.
Are you not going to count that?
I would say if it was an overseas bird and I got good views, and yes,
Yeah.
but from my Australia list, more so my New South Wales list, and because I live here, I would need a photo, because I know I can just go back and try harder and see it next time. But
Yeah.
if it's overseas, and batch. The funny thing though, I've actually got 10 spare batteries for my camera that I always keep charged. I'm so super ridiculous about that sort of stuff that
10.
I have 10. I've had a weekend away where I've had no charging stations, no reception, no nothing. And I've got through about 8 of them. But I
Yeah.
have, because I've had 3 of the same camera that all came with a battery, and then I bought a bunch of spares. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know how it happened, but I've got 10 batteries for my my
Wow.
camera.
That's epic.
I've
Epic.
never run out.
That's so good. Oh well,
Yeah.
there you go. Well, that's why you've never run out. You've got the numbers.
Yeah.
That's so good. But yeah, I think there's lots to be said about all of that. I want to go back to something that you said before about, you seem very specific in terms of your geography and where you like to bird. Like, so you're in New South Wales at the moment. What's your day-to-day sort of birding? What's your local patch? Where do you go most frequently?
So my home LGA would be Lake Macquarie, which borders onto Newcastle. So I've got Lake Macquarie and Newcastle are my main LGAs that I bird in. But Lake Macquarie just takes over Newcastle in that I have seen more birds in Lake Macquarie, and I've got about 3 or 4 good close birding mates that are also Lake Macquarie obsessed. So we have a bit of a healthy battle within this LGA to sort of get the highest numbers. And not that that's what it's about, but it's a fun optional extra that you can just sort of make it more interesting. If something turns up, it's really cool. We'll all just let each other know, and we'll all be there within seconds and see a bird that might just rock up, even if it's super common and you can just get it in Newcastle. If it shows up in Lake Macquarie, where all 5 of us are there,
Yeah, no,
we share the locations.
it's really interesting how it's competitive, but it also leads to camaraderie and friendship, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's only if you don't let the competitive side of it gain the better of you, because maybe for some people it does.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it does for sure. Yeah, and that just ruins it for me. As soon as it becomes stressful and there's any sort of argument or disbelief of a sighting or something like that, then I'm just like, nah, I can't. This
Mm.
is not what birding is to me. Birding's a fun, enjoyable thing, and I've got other things that are stressful that can stress me. I don't need this to stress me as well. So birding is strictly fun and enjoyment for me. And if anything pops up that's not fun and enjoyable, I'm out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how do you make sure you sort of rein that in your own birding and in your network? Like, is there a way to maintain that level of, what would you say? You could say fair play or fun or enjoying the hobby and the passion, because like birding is like everyone you can bird everywhere, like, and there are birders from every country.
Yeah.
And it's such a universal hobby, and that necessarily means that there are birders that represent all swathes of humans and personalities.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, there's different types of birders and different risks, maybe.
Yeah.
But to go back to, you said you were mentioning the pelagics, and that's another thing that can really get birders together. You've just come back from a pelagic today, haven't you?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Tell us firstly about that pelagic that you went on today, and then just about your love of pelagics generally.
Yeah, for sure. Today, it was a big day. And I did one on Friday as well. So today's Sunday. I did one on Friday and today on Sunday. But both of them were about an hour's drive from my house. We do have a local trip from Swansea, which is in my Lake Macquarie LGA, but we have a pretty treacherous sort of bar between the breakwall to get out, and the swell has to be really small, and the skippers don't really like to sort of risk it, and it just hasn't been really ideal to sort of go out on that boat. So it's kind of just been, we've all sort of just left it because it's just a little bit too much drama than it's worth. But so I tend to just drive an hour down to Terrigal or an hour up to Port Stephens, Nelson Bay. Friday was Terrigal and today was Port Stephens. Terrigal was a great trip. We had 5 species of albatross, brown skewers. We had 6 brown skewers sitting at the back of the boat.
Yeah.
Every brown skewer I've ever seen has just sort of been on a mission, and it's just pinned it past the boat and kept going. And you say, "Yep, cool, done." But these guys they were with us basically the whole trip, and that was probably the highlight. I mean, you're not a super rare bird, but it was just really cool to see so many, and there was a bunch of other good birds as well. But today we had sort of similar species, maybe -4, I guess, but just really slow in between sightings. And that can sort of get a bit disheartening. Every trip's a good trip. I just love being out on the water no matter what. But yeah, it wasn't it? For how, getting up early and driving up there and being on the boat all day and driving back home, and how you can get quite
Yeah.
tired.
And,
It's
and
pretty
doing a
tiring, but
podcast.
and then jumping onto a podcast, yeah, it can get quite tiring, but yeah, it was still a really good day, and got to talk to all the other birders and catch up and stuff. So that's always good too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's an amazing environment out there. Like just to be out there, as you say, is every trip's a good trip. So it leads me to ask: is that your favorite circumstance or habitat in which to bird? And if not, what's your favorite habitat? Like, where do you love going? Which
Oh
environment?
yeah. Oh yeah. Great question. I pelagic birding is, like I said, my first pelagic was January last year, so it's been about a year and a half. I've been sort of doing solid pelagics, maybe one or two a month. And yeah, just the unknown of pelagics, just not knowing what is this going to rock up, is so the anticipation is just enough to I've just got a constant, you know, flock of butterflies in my stomach thinking about what might turn up every time you go out on a boat. But if I didn't have pelagic birding, I guess I would probably say, sea watching as well. That's as close to pelagic birding as you can get. But no, I really love the dry sort of western
Mm.
birding. I haven't done a lot of that, but I find rainforest birding, like forest birding, really difficult because the birds like to sort of hide and it's dark, and again, you can't take great photos because it's so dark. But not that has a lot to do with it, but yeah, it's out in the open, dry sort of desert birding. That's really cool. I'd love to do a lot more of that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There's so many different habitats. Well, I live in Cairns, as you know, and it is amazing up here. Like, I love the rainforest. It's there's a serenity and you really find a lot of peace in the rainforest. Because you're sheltered. You're sheltered by all this massive vegetation above you, around you, and under you as well.
Yeah.
That you just feel so blessed to be in a place like that. And it's the same with anywhere, really. If you're somewhere natural, anywhere that's sort of out of the urban jungle, I think is so important. It goes back to what we were saying about it's almost therapeutic, like, especially for us introverts.
Oh, it is therapeutic, very therapeutic. I probably should have said that at the beginning when you asked my joy.
Mm.
Where does my joy in birding come from? It's yeah, and quite often, work, being a musician is my work. I struggle to call it that because I have so much fun doing it, but at the same time, it is like any other job. It's stressful. There's a lot of planning that goes into it, all the touring, and then setting gear up and packing gear up, and socializing and trying to know what to say to an audience and all that sort of stuff. It's really mental. you know it's all in your head sort of stuff, and that you need to sort of have some release for. And yeah, birding just gives me that release for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. In a way, they're contrasting things at the extreme, because at one end you've got birds and wildlife and nature away from people, and then on the other side you're in a building, you probably usually at night time, with loads of people,
Yeah.
loads of artificial light, not one piece, not one plant, not one animal.
Yeah. Very
So
loud.
yeah, that's right. So let's jump into that then. Now that you brought it up, because I play music as well, and there any sort of overlap between birding and music? What overlap can you think of?
um I guess, if for me, music is, so I come from a songwriter sort of standpoint, is there's probably lots of musicians that just uh they would just play your pub gigs playing covers and stuff just to get a bit of extra coin. But so I've been playing music for about 15 years now. I've got 4 albums and I've traveled all over playing, as you mentioned in the beginning. I'm pretty serious about it. But first most, I'm a songwriter, and I really love writing lyrics and writing beautiful melodies on the guitar, and whatever it may be, to construct a really nice, well thought out song. And I think and it's poetry. It's an art form, and I think yeah, birding has a similarity there with photography is an art form. Just being out in nature and feeling that same sort of a feeling you get when you have a release to sort of write, if you're angry or something, I can go write a song. If I'm angry, I can go and, get some relief from the birds, just going out and just
Yeah.
watching the birds can just take all that stress away the same way in writing a good song can. I mean, at least for me, it can.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's two things you brought up there that we should distinguish: is the music from the artist's perspective, and then music from the listener's perspective, because
Yeah.
it's definitely different. And I think you can condense it to from at least from the listener's standpoint. Like we all have music that we love. It doesn't matter what music it is, but I think everyone listening to this can think of their favorite artist, favorite song, and the feeling that gives them. And I think you can condense it down to, along with birding, you can condense it down to the appreciation of beauty.
Yep.
Because birds are beautiful.
Yep.
And we appreciate them. And we can appreciate music, maybe not the same way, but it's definitely in the same tree, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. Maybe I'm being a bit too philosophical, but that's what I like doing.
Not at all. No,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of parallels, and if you had time to sit and think about it all, there'd be many. But yeah, definitely the whole innocent side of it, and just being something that everyone can. Well, I would hope everyone could listen to music and enjoy it. The same way as I think anyone that might discover what birding really is would really love it if they just were open to it and they knew what it was, because I really feel like it's something that people, I know for a fact that it wasn't even something that registered in my mind as something that you could do. I thought that it was like an overseas thing, or there wasn't, it wasn't a thing, but now I realize it is very much a thing. And yeah, I don't know whether that was just my sheltered childhood, not having those people to talk to about these sorts of things. But in my experience, it just was never a thing to me.
Wow, yeah, it's. I mean, it's definitely the case that is what most people think, because most people aren't birders.
Yeah,
and they'd have no way of, or maybe they just don't see, or I don't know. There's loads of different reasons, but you go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's amazing now that I've gotten so into birding. I've been taking photos of birds, like you said in the beginning, for about 7 years, and seriously listing for about 2 years. But it's sort of affected all my family in ways, in positive ways. Whereas I would never have thought that my mum would be sending me photos of birds she's seen and going, "What's this?" Or like everyone else is sharing an interest in it too, and they love it. They're like, "Wow!" Or I'll send them a photo of maybe a rare bird that I've found, or and they'll share the joy and be like, "That's incredible! I didn't know that thing existed." And it just goes to show, when you actually talk to people about it and they start to see what it is, they're like, "Wow, I didn't realize, the amount of interesting birds we have here, or, that that these things exist."
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I've got a personal analogy for that. Back in Chile, I used to live in Chile, and we've got two very good friends there who weren't birders. And then I sort of came along, and we became friends. And I was walking around with my binoculars and my camera and just doing what I do, birding. And they were like, oh, what's this? What are you doing? What's people's ears perk up when you say something, or when they see something, and to what you were saying, that's the case, and then they become more interested, and then it can go both ways, can't it? Depending on the personality of who you're talking about. But I think most of the time, if people are open to birds and nature more generally, and they have someone with which to engage and ask questions, someone knowledgeable enough to answer their questions, like me and you, then they can kind of take their own steps, and that's what they did. So they went out to buy the binoculars, and now they've got an Instagram page of where they put up all these amazing bird pictures. And
that's awesome.
It's so good. Cool. It's the joy of birding spreading, and no doubt they're now talking about it to their friends. You know what I mean?
Well, that's so awesome. And I guess on the flip side of that is, I think when I was younger and I started surfing, I had a bunch of mates that were probably a bit just real real blokes, just dudes, just doing stupid things, as you do when you're a teenager. But I remember one of our mates who was probably a little bit more wealthy than us he bought like the first video camera that any of us had sort of owned. This was when you could sort of first get those handy cam things or whatever they were called when they first sort of coming out. And so we would take turns in filming and getting footage of each other. And I had this one mate who pointed the camera up at like a silver gull or something and filmed this silver gull. And it must have been at the same time as one of my other mates was surfing and did something really cool, and he missed it because he was filming this bird.
Yeah.
And I remember he just got given so much crap for filming this bird. And this was before my interest in birds. So I feel like that had a little bit of a scarring effect on me. That I felt like I should just not ever look at birds.
Wow.
And for ages, I thought, even with the camera, I would put the camera up to like at the time I'd be like, that's an eagle. Every raptor to me was an eagle back when I was that age. And I'm like, here's an eagle. And I'd put the camera up. But in the back of my mind, I'd be thinking, oh, don't look at the bird. Look at what you should be taking photos of. And I don't know how I overcame that, but you just reminded me then when you were telling me about your friends there that was very much a thing for me when I was probably 17 to 20 in that sort of age bracket. I would not dare to put the camera up to a bird to, miss the real action of surfing or something, which is now just stupid. I'd much rather take photos of birds than actually surfing.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. That really is interesting.
Yeah.
It goes to show how like even, a split second moment or like a memory can keep influencing you. That's
yeah. Yep.
I guess it goes back a little bit to what we were saying about, being alone in the bush, but do you see any benefits, or do you take any enjoyment out of group birding? Like, do you go out birding with mates a lot, like together, or?
The first thing that comes to mind when you say that is pelagics.
Yeah.
Because that's group birding. But it's very different, isn't it, when you go in the bush? And there's that element of, you can just get as close as you want before a bird flushes or something, which isn't very ethical. But when you've got more people, it's I guess it takes longer distances for a bird to sort of be scared and fly off or something. Yeah, I know it's a funny one because more people there's more eyes. You might see more birds, but then at the same time, more people there, more fear for a bird, if you're getting too close. So
yeah.
I don't know. I have had occasions where maybe a rare bird's turned up and lots of people have come to twitch that bird, and I've bumped into a whole heap of other birders who, I mean, it's always good to bump into people that have the same hobby as you. Like that's great. There's not many, like I said, like my friends and family, and they're not true birders, so they're not going to be as excited talking about birds as I am. So it's cool in that sense where you catch up with people and all enjoy that bird together. But yeah, there's also, I mean, there's a magic number, I think, and more than 3, I guess, in a bush sort of walk can be a bit too much.
Yeah, I agree, and I think what comes to my mind is the noise. When there's one of you, there's no noise. You're silent. Yeah, and you're almost holding your breath. When I'm in the bush, I'm like, I breathe. I feel myself breathing more quietly.
Yeah,
and that means you see way more.
Yeah,
of anything, whether it's birds or butterflies or anything. Yeah. But as soon as there's another person, then the noise level goes higher up. So
and I think too, like if from a photography standpoint, even if you just got one other mate, you might be getting a few nice shots, and then your mate might be like, I'm going to try this other angle. And as soon as he moves, he kind of ruins the shot for you, sort of thing. So there's always that. It's like you can't control what your friend's going to do. So yeah. And like you said, when you're on your own, you end up getting way better shots. Or like, I know you do a lot of filming and stuff. Like if your mate was there, like walking around the bird, that, you ruin the shot almost. So yeah, I don't know. It's enjoyable to be able to catch up with your mates and talk about something you both share an interest in, but at the same time, it's got its time and place, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess another to wrap that thought up is that where you have group birding is in the ecotourism part of birding, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you involved at all in ecotourism group tours? Have you done any guiding?
Uh,
Do you think about it?
I have actually done. I've done one guided workshop, I guess you call it, for beginner birders.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure I could probably do more if I coordinated with the guys, but music's sort of my main priority. So yeah, if it would just have to work out for me to be able to do more of that. I'd love to do more of that. It's really, really cool. But I have also taken a lot of people tend to see my eBird records and think that I might be able to get them onto Good Birds. So there's probably been a handful of people that have come from another part of the country who've come strictly to meet up with me and for me to show them the birds. And so I've done a bit of that. That's always fun. That's always cool. And
Yeah.
quite often it's someone that, I might follow on Instagram, and I've known them for a few years on Instagram and meeting for the first time when we come to look at birds in my local area. So that's cool. But yeah, that's got its place as well. All the guiding and that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's another thing altogether, isn't it? Because if you're looking for a new bird and you're not going to see it without that local knowledge or whatever, that's very much needed too, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. And that comes down to knowing your local patch, like we were saying before, and knowing what can show up and when it does, being there. Yeah, right time, right place. Let's talk about eBird, James.
Oh
Why?
yeah.
Why? This is what you're here for. What?
Is
What?
it?
What about eBird is so amazing in your eyes? Why are you such an avid lister? Why are you such an avid eBirder?
um, I think probably at the highest point, I love birds. I love bird watching. I love taking photos of birds. At the highest point of it, I'm a perfectionist. I try to just do everything that I do to the best that I can do it. I've done that with bodyboarding, surfing when I was younger. I tried to just do that as best as I could. I done it with, like, I used to love cars when I was younger. I just used to try and do everything the best I could with fixing up cars, um, and being teaching myself how to do things and not rely on other people. Um, and now with music, and well, music's been there forever, but with music, it's my main thing. It's my business. It's my name, and I just try to do everything as perfectly as I can. But with birding, with eBird, as you know, you log onto that website on the desktop or your phone or whatever, and you look at it, and just the way it's laid out is so easy to use. That anything you want to know, you can find out how many silver gulls you've seen in the last 10 years. Like, you can just do so many different lists and things. I'm such a perfectionist. I've always got to be like going for that photo tick or that new bird in a new LGA, or, not that I'm trying to talk myself up. My numbers aren't that great, but I love to be able to just keep that up and have something to strive for and a goal to just, fill in color in all those LGAs, like people have said on this before, like kindergarten birding, where coloring the LGAs. It's really, really cool. It's a real shame, actually, that Newcastle and Lake Macquarie are two of the smallest LGAs in New South Wales. So my darkest red patches on eBird are almost not visible. So it kind of sucks in that way. If you logged onto my account, it'd be like, oh yeah, he's got a few, yellow patches, but my red patches are like tiny dots. But
yeah. That's so interesting. And it's great that you can do that at the national level as well. You can zoom out and see in each state what you've got as well.
Yeah,
and indeed, when you zoom out to the world, to each country,
that's right.
It's that database where you can log everything that you have seen and heard. It's
and
insane.
There's just no way I could ever do that on any sort of spreadsheet or handwritten book. There's no way. So it's very. I thank the eBird gods for creating it. It's so cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love eBird. I must say, I used to be an extremely avid lister, but lately I've been trying not to. So I was up at Mount Lewis the other day.
Yeah.
And it's amazing up there, man. It's I don't know if you've been, but it's incredible.
Yeah.
And I was on that little track that goes down to the dam. And a group of chowchillas just scraping around a leaf litter, and a couple of fern wrens as well, which was great. Wow. And and it's been a while since this is started, but like I started to feel my hand reaching into my pocket and going, oh shit, I've got to add the list. How many are there? How many
Oh yeah.
how many chatchillas? How many fern wrens? You
Yeah.
know, breeding code, whatever, male, female. And
Yeah.
I held back and I said, I'm going to leave my phone in my pocket. I'm just going to look at these birds and listen to them, because it's so silent up there, apart from the scraping of the leaves of these animals.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Oh yeah.
And I felt, I don't know, like it's and long-time listeners of the show will know that might be what would you say, disappointed, but I don't know, I felt
Not at all. No, I can totally share that with you in that. I mean, I would probably do this in other places, but within my own local LGAs,
yeah.
I've just about seen, well, I've seen everything that's locally going to occur unless something random shows up. So sometimes if I just go to a spot where I feel like something might turn up, or a good hot spot, I will go there and I won't do a list. I'll just go there and until I see something that might be different on the list, I won't add a new list, because I've got all these birds on my list. I don't need to do a list. So I will do what you just said and just take photos and just look at the birds and just spend time there and not be on the phone.
Yeah, well,
And I have actually done a list later on as well. I've done trips where I've just not looked at the phone and just done the trip, added the birds later on. So
yeah. I think that speaks to what I was feeling as well. Yeah, is trying to be in the moment, because the sort of the whole point of being out up at Mount Lewis is to disconnect, and then I take my phone out and it's like I'm back in my head. I'm looking at a screen again, and my neck's piled down like that. And I was up at a friend's house up in Coranda. We've got a good friend up in Coranda. And I took my binoculars just they've got a really nice view out onto some rainforest, and a Maclay's honeyeater just frolicking about in the trees. Same thing. I just admired it through my binoculars, and I didn't feel the need to report it.
That's it. Yeah.
And this has happened during the hiatus of the show. So when I was banging on about listing in the last episode, now I'm not so much, because I don't know. I've also developed an interest in butterflies and moths. Being up here in Cairns, and all of that. So I'm sort of broadening my perspective, and I don't know if this is gone on too long as the host, but do you see what I mean?
Definitely. I was just going to say, when I first heard about eBird, I was actually quite scared of it. I thought it might take away from the first couple of people that told me about it, just birding with them, I'd see them putting their numbers in and all that, and just them looking down for just a little bit of time and putting numbers and maybe writing something, of a high count or something, writing a bit of a comment about that. Just to me, I was like, oh, I don't want to be doing that. Like, I just be looking at the birds. But then, obviously then I got it and got onto it, and I've just been hooked. But yeah, there's times where I don't want to do that at all, for sure. Yeah.
It's a fine line, isn't it? I suppose I have an addictive personality though. So I'm either all in or I'm not.
This is me too. Yeah, this is exactly what I was saying with the perfectionism thing. I'm just, if I do something, I just go for it, and I do it to its fullest. Yeah.
Let's move on now. Because I'm interested to talk about some other aspects of the natural world that you're interested in. Because I see some photos you put up, man, of frogs and orchids and these like things that are outside of the birding world in a sense, but within the natural world. So what? So let's start with that. How did you come about, getting into sort of the other sort of fields of nature?
Yeah, it's funny as well. It's the same as birds, where I didn't pay attention, and if you don't pay attention to something, you're never gonna discover, what the joy of it. And it was the same with, native orchids and frogs and all that sort of stuff. 3 years ago, I didn't know frogs were nocturnal. I'd see a frog in the middle of the day as a kid and be like, okay, there's a frog in the middle of the day, and by association just think that frogs, you just happen upon them whenever. But no, they're nocturnal, and these are things that you learn when you start paying attention to nature and being in the field and seeing birds, and then just slightly sort of, oh, what's that, and noticing other things in the surrounding and understanding the habitats and I'm still very much a rookie when it comes to all my trees and habitat types and knowing, what's flowering and what things are feeding on or whatever. But that doesn't mean I don't pay attention to everything in the whole scheme of things. Yeah, orchids. I have a few mates actually, a few key mates that had been into orchids for a while and frogs. And so out in the field, they might say, that's a pterostylis green hood or something, and I'd be like, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then it wasn't until seeing their photos and looking at them and going, oh, hang on, this thing is actually incredible. Look at how intricate and detailed this little tiny flower is, this little thing smaller than your thumbnail, but when you take a macro photo of it, it just looks like a completely different world. And the same with frogs. I would, so many nights driving home from gigs late at night and during summer, and it's raining, and I see that hundreds of frogs hopping across the road with no idea that there could be 6 or 7 different species hopping across the road. You don't stop and look at them. You're just driving down the highway at 100 kilometers an hour. And and now I find myself just pulling over and trying to find out what they are, identify them, take photos, and it's getting, again, getting a list up. I've got a list for all my frogs I've seen. I've got a list for my orchids, and iNaturalist is so good for that. Whereas everything you upload, it just consolidates it into these lists for you. You don't have to do anything. And then you click on frogs. There's every frog photo you've ever taken, every species, and it categorizes it. And to me, that's just like, I get so much joy out of that. It's so cool.
Yeah. No, I was going to bring up iNaturalist. I absolutely love iNaturalist. When you're speaking about the frogs and orchids there, that's almost exactly what happened when I started looking more closely to Lepidoptera, to butterflies and moths.
Yeah.
Because I, as listeners of this show will know, I spent some time on the Coffs Coast. Near Coffs Harbour up in Woolgoolga, a little town, Whoopee they call it.
Yep. I've played some gigs up there. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
I have.
lovely.
Yeah.
And before that we were in Melbourne, which isn't the best spot, obviously, for butterflies and moths. I presume, I'm still learning, but because it's colder.
Yeah.
So when you go up to the subtropics, the numbers were starting to, I started noticing more of that, insects and these amazing colors. And this is when I was out birding, doing eBird lists, and I was like, okay, no, I'm a birder. Don't look at the butterflies. I'm a birder.
Yeah.
And so,
actually, this triggers a memory where I was listening to one of your other episodes. I think someone said, you mentioned you were moving to Cairns, and they said, oh, you might have to get into butterflies or something. So you've actually done that.
Yes, you're
I don't
right.
know who that was. Someone did say that, though.
Oh, who was it? You're right. I don't remember. We'll have to go back and look. But I have, and
that's so cool.
And that actually started. Yeah, now that I think about it, and I've reviewed the past couple of years, that started in Woolgoolga, like around that lake on Newman's Road. If anyone listening from Whoopee, hello.
Yeah.
But
whole town.
Yeah.
7 people.
And then I started taking pictures and posting on iNat, and getting into butterflies and buying, the field guide to butterflies. And up here now it's times 10. It's crazy, like
overwhelming.
The mecca, yeah. So, and now I just go out and I try and see everything, and I just go out, and there's so much more potential now because it's not just the birds.
Yeah.
Although the birds were the central thing, now they've blossomed into this thing where I'm like looking for everything, and that's been magical.
Well, I have this thing where I've been a musician for all these years, and I've traveled to all these amazing places to play music. And as I said, I only got into listing 2 years ago, and I was only just a bird photographer and not even that serious for a few years before that. And when I finally sort of was like, okay, this is a thing, I started to feel all this, I don't know what the feeling was, but I just felt really robbed of all these places I've been and not even looked for a bird, like I've been up to Cairns a bunch of times. I've been to Elie Beach, and I've been down to Tassie like 5 or 6 times, and I've been out west. I've been to South Oz and all these places, and not even looked at a single bird. And I feel like I'm playing catch up, and like, oh, I wish I could just go back in time. And I had so many, free days off, days of driving where I could have pulled over, or raptors that might have been on the side of the highway that I, would have seen a long time ago and wouldn't have only just seen 2 weeks ago, that sort of thing. And, but now I think when I'm out looking for birds, I would be stupid to not look and photograph all these other things I'm seeing, because, you know, in another 10 years, and I think, oh, I'm going to be so interested in frogs or orchids. Why did I not go and look at the frogs and orchids? So I'm trying to just do it all, you know. I'd be silly not to.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what's beautiful about nature. It's so varied and rich, and people have different pathways, you know, to that place where we all come together as birders. So no, I completely get that, and it's having therapeutic that therapeutic time. There was a question I had also, which was more practical, going back to that relationship between birding and music. Is how do you balance your time and energy? Because this is something I struggle with, like with full-time work. Is like, and you know, being a husband and being a full-time worker, having things to do, things to worry about, going to the gym. I've started going to the gym, as you can hopefully tell.
Well done.
for those of you who are watching on YouTube. So how do you sort of divide your time and energy with that?
Yeah, it's difficult. I would definitely say after the whole 3-year COVID thingy and the last year or so, that the birding has kind of taken over my music a little bit, which I shouldn't allow it to. I should be a little more healthy with that sort of, you know, in distributing my time between the two of them. It's definitely very addictive, and things suffer because of it. But I'm pretty lucky in the sense that as a musician, there's only really there's 2 days of the week that I can really, you know, perform and work. Some Friday nights, you know, so 3 days of the week that you can actually go out and work. My weekdays are for my, you know, admin, you know, where I'm fixing the website, I'm booking new gigs in, I'm planning what I'm doing with my life. What if I'm doing a new album? Should I order new merch to sell? All this stuff, you know, and it's very time consuming. A lot of people might not realize, but yeah, being a musician is just like any other job. It's very time consuming, and you've got to give it your all, because there's a lot of people that do it and you fall behind if you don't, you know, stay up to date with everything. So it's very difficult, but I do have sort of Monday to Thursday every week to do whatever, you know. If I want to put that energy into my music, I do it. If I want to go birding, I do it. And I tend to go birding, but you know, I'm what I'm trying to say is I'm pretty lucky. I'm luckier than a lot of people, where I do have this time that I can go birding and I can do sort of what I want when I want.
Yeah.
But I have to admit to myself, I should be giving a little more time into my work and not being so overindulgent in the birds. But like I said, I'm playing catch up. I've got to see all these birds I hadn't seen, you know, my whole life. So.
Yeah. Do birds inspire your songs? Do you write songs about birds?
I haven't written a specific song about birds, but definitely nature and just the whole side of I'm really, I wouldn't say against, but I get a little bit bristled when I see, you know, the whole concrete jungle. And, you know, as a kid growing up in the bush, it was not something I ever saw. So when I see, you know, all the people in suits and ties and, you know, Sydney and cars and trucks and pollution and all that sort of stuff, you know, put it all in one box. And to me, that looks I kind of like to stay away from that. But obviously it has its place, and a lot of people, you know, have to work and make money, and that's the way the world goes around. But yeah, to me, I just, when I'm songwriting, I just, if something's struck me, I have to feel something, you know what I mean? Something, I've got to feel good about whatever I'm doing, otherwise it's not going to be good.
Yeah. You got to be in a good headspace, and you got to,
that makes sense. Yeah.
And you got to be inspired. If you lack the inspiration, I guess that's why being a musician, a performing musician, and a self-writing musician is that it's a bit risky, because what if the inspiration just stops coming one day?
Yeah. And well, true. Yeah. I think, I don't know, there's always something going on in life where something will there's always emotions in your life, and if you're in touch with your emotions, like I feel like I am, I feel like it's much easier. Maybe if you're someone who's not as in touch with your emotions, and you know, I don't know. I feel like we're around the same sort of age, but when we were growing up, we were still in that sort of age bracket where it was like, you're a man, you don't cry, you can't have feelings, that sort of a thing.
Mm.
I feel like that doesn't happen as much now, but definitely when I was growing up, it was really like, just harden up because you're a bloke. So there's a lot of built up sort of stress and obviously
Repression. Yeah,
yeah,
repression.
the sad parts of my life that we don't know if we will go into, but there are some very sad parts of my childhood, and a lot of that is still within me, and maybe that's why I don't find it hard to write music, because I can draw on that when I need to at times,
Yeah, okay.
and it only takes something small to trigger massive amounts of emotion on the and I haven't struggled to write a song. It all sort of comes flooding at the right times. Yeah, I'd force a song to be written, or like a lot of the the more poppy songs that are just really written by robots type songs. No offense, but like that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would never say, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write a song.
Mm.
That's the first mistake. No, I wait for something to come, and yeah, but yeah, maybe one day a song about birds, but definitely it all. I love metaphors and analogies and all that sort of stuff, and writing about something but singing about it in a different way. That sort of stuff keep people thinking, keep people. It could mean something totally different to them as what it means to you. So yeah, that for me, that's what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or beauty is in the eye of the beholder, as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, we've lost all the birders, I think. So let's bring it back
Let's
to the
get back
birds.
into birds. Yeah.
Let's close. Let's start closing. James, it's been great.
Yeah.
Can't. It's been absolutely great. What is your favorite bird? Is the first part of this question. Favorite bird, and then what's your dream bird?
Yeah. Okay. So you sent me the questions for me to have a rough scan over, and I intentionally didn't get any answers, so I could be put on the spot. I feel like that makes for a better show.
Aha.
Thinking off the cuff and not having a planned answer. But the first thing that comes to mind is I've had, okay, so last year I had a very, very exciting sighting, and this year I've had another very exciting sighting. So, and those two birds have there's a real battle between the two of them. So if I could pick two, it's going to be those. So in what was it, August last year, I did my first eagle hawkneck pelagic down in Tasmania. So I did the Saturday and Sunday, and going down there, I'm just thinking, I'm still very fresh to pelagic birding and hadn't, really had much experience. And I thought I'll throw myself in the deep end. I'm going, I need to get all those Tassie endemics. I need to do a pelagic from Eagle Hawk because it's the best. And yeah, on the first day we were on the way out, and you had Karen Dick on the show, didn't you?
Yeah.
So it was a trip with Karen, and we're on the way out, and someone said something to Karen about new birds for her, and she mentioned that she'd done however many pelagics off Tassie, and all of her impressive numbers and stuff, and someone said something, and she said, okay, well, for me to get a lifer today would be very difficult. She said, the weather's not ideal. There hasn't been much around lately. I'd have to get something ridiculous like a Chatham albatross. And maybe 2 hours later, we saw a Chatham albatross, which is like, I think it was the first record in 12 years or something in Australian.
Wow. Yeah. I remember seeing that, I think, on Facebook. Yeah, I remember seeing posting.
This was my first Tassie pelagic, and probably 4 hours into the trip on the first day.
Wow.
And
That's
yeah,
crazy.
and it was, I remember giving Karen like a massive high five when we saw it fly, and it was with us for about, I think it was like 7 minutes. We worked out from the timestamp on the photos that it stayed around the boat for about 7 minutes, which is that's great. That's a great amount of time. It wasn't one of those flybys and you don't see it again. We got great photos and great views, and so yeah. And leading up to that, I thought I'm never going to see a Chatham albatross in my life. Like that's not going to happen. And there it was. It was incredible. So that's that one. That's and it'd probably have to be my favorite seabird. And then the second one is so about 2 weeks ago, I don't know if you've seen on Facebook, but the Regent honey eaters at Morisset. Yeah. So there was a really nice bit of habitat in there, which is in my LGA, the one I, list in mostly. And I sort of scour Google Earth and look at all little patches that I could maybe potentially find a new bird in for the LGA, and just looking around at creeks and just patches of bush and places I haven't been, because it's a relatively big LGA, but at the same time it is kind of, it's small big, it's
Mm,
yeah.
mm.
Once you've been around it, it feels small, but it is, I guess it's pretty big compared to, I guess, some of the smaller Sydney LGAs. So there's still a lot sort of to be discovered. And there's this one patch of bush where I'd been going on, and I hadn't sort of looked at too many eBird records from this location. But I just went in there randomly one day, and after seeing it on Google Earth, and had a nice little list going, and some good year ticks, and got my numbers up there for the year. And excuse me, I saw a, a nice line of swamp mahogany just flowering on the creek line, and just was looking at that, just thinking, okay, that could attract something, like it was just starting to sort of blossom, and there was a few honey eaters. Yeah, a lot of yellow-faced honey eaters and white-naped honey eaters, and I was just thinking, okay, if something good turns up, like a swift parrot or a regent honey eater in this LGA, it's going to be here, because this is some good habitat.
Yep.
And I got home, and maybe a day later, so I don't think you mind me saying his name, but Mick Roderick, who's the BirdLife Australia guy for this area and does a lot of work with the Regent Honey Eaters. I'm sort of in touch with him, and he sort of messaged me after seeing my list, and he said, "Oh, how did you go at that spot?" I guess he knew something that I didn't. And what that was, that there'd been reports of Regent Honey Eaters in previous years at that location, and he
Yeah.
was just checking on the flowering condition of those trees, and it just so happened to be that very spot that I had noticed these flowering trees in, and we sort of worked it out. And this was end of March, I think, and we're in June now, and I saw the birds in mid-June. Yeah, I went back probably 5 or 6 times, and each time there was more birds, and started getting yellow tufted honey eaters.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Uh, a few noisy firebirds would rock up, which isn't, that's not, that's, we get noisy firebirds, but to have them there at that location, and for them to start coming in after not being there, was pretty cool. And then what happened? I went away for a little while, and I hadn't been in there. And then I went back in. Yeah, it must have been just on 2 weeks ago now. I went back in for a little look, and I was walking past, and there'd been a lot of little lorikeets in there.
Nice.
It's a
Yeah.
very long-winded story, but I think it's worthwhile. Yeah, and I was going past that little zone where I'd seen these flowering trees, and I stopped just to maybe have a look at these little lorikeets again, because they were in pretty big numbers. I had to count about 80, 90 little lorikeets, which is really cool. And got some shots, and then I took a photo of it ended up being like a juvenile white-cheeked honey eater. And I looked at it, and my heart dropped for a minute, because I just, after looking at the camera really quickly, well, before I looked at the camera and I was looking through the camera at the bird, I was like, that looks really a lot like a Regent honey eater with the color. Oh, no, it's not. And as I was telling myself, no, it's not a Regent honey eater, I heard a Regent honey eater call. And
Wow.
I'm like, you are kidding me, after just doubting that was what that was, and hearing one. Okay, I'm like, all right. So I've walked down to this creek line, and I've looked up above me. Straight away, I saw 3 birds, 3 Regent honey eaters, all calling, flying from tree to tree. The males sort of doing that call to each other, like. And then I was straight on the phone to Mick. I said, "Man, you wouldn't believe it. I got 3 Regent honey eaters right here." And then it was all on. It was like back and forth on the phone. I did a bit of a lap around the place, sort of to check if there was any more, in that general area. But I came back around, and yeah, once I got back around, I looked up and tried to do another proper count, and I was on the phone at the time, and there was a tree straight in front of me that had 7 Regent honey eaters in it. And I was clear as day. I had 3 on one branch. I've actually got a photo of 3 of them sitting on one branch, and another 4 in that same tree. And I had another 3 to the tree beside of it. And I was just like, okay, man, I've got to go. I've got 10 Regent honey eaters in front of me. So I had to just sit back and just enjoy the moment. And I had that first day where I saw them, I was probably there for about 6 hours, and just totally by myself, just soaking it up. And yeah, listening to them call. I had seen one before, and only 2 months prior to that, out at Cessnock, which is not too far, different LGA, but my life one was out there. But those birds weren't calling, and one of them was banded, one of them was wild, but it was distant. But these birds were all unbanded, all wild
Wow.
birds,
All wild birds.
all wild
Wow.
birds, and a flock of 10, which was just ridiculous. I think there's been about, I don't know, 200 people over the last week or so have been to the site and seen them. So it's pretty incredible, pretty big deal. But yeah, that initial sighting was really difficult to know what to do, because naturally there's going to be a lot of people that are going to go there. But yeah, I did what I was instructed to do, and made sure, it was okay to list them and all that sort of stuff. And Mick ended up telling me, yeah, that's probably the best thing, just to get regular counts and see the birds still there, and, photos and all that sort of stuff that sort of matters.
Yeah.
So yeah, very long-winded, but Chatham albatross and Regent honeyeater, there's a close battle between the two of those guys.
Wow.
And a dream bird, I don't know.
So amazing, man. Just listening to you, like, the joy pours out of you, like, for both of those stories, Chatham albatross and the Regents. That's crazy. Oh, it's interesting, isn't it? Because and I always keep bringing this up, is that it must be related to how we used to live in the wild and see these rare things and be excited about them. Yep. Because we were going to hunt them, presumably, or because it was something that we were evolved to.
An instinctive thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that this bird is rare, so rare, is makes it even more like, oh, I found it, I've got it, this is it. So good, man.
Yeah.
So good.
And after and not that you should do this, but on the inside, you're sort of telling yourself you're probably never going to see one of these. And then when you actually see it, it's that much more, you're in disbelief that, and especially when you're the one who's stumbled upon this bird, and you haven't gone and twitched someone else's sighting. The difference of that is incredible. I never thought it would be so overwhelming,
Yeah.
Like my life for Regent honeyeater was amazing. It was cool. Someone else had found that bird and I went and saw it. Whereas these ones, even after already seeing one before, like, the emotions were just incredible. I just couldn't put that on anything else. It was different kind of feeling totally. So, and not to mention all the messages and things, of people. I went back in about 3 days later and there was a guy there and he was in tears. He saw his first Regent honeyeater and he was like, yeah, very emotional. He didn't know that I was the guy that had seen that. And, I don't want any sort of attention for it, but like, I'm not going to be like, hey man, I'm the guy that found them. No, I saw this guy there and he's just like, wow, man. I'm just like, yeah, man, that's so special. That's so cool.
Yeah. Amazing that a bird can bring us to tears, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
It's great, man. Wow. And so what about, if there's a bird you haven't seen yet, or you haven't photographed yet, what comes to mind?
Oh man. Well, I'm still playing catch ups, like I say this, but time does what it does, and eventually I will see all the birds I want to see, I guess, in Australia, but there's still so many places I've been many times and not returned to go birding. Cairns being one of them. I think I've mentioned that to you.
Yeah.
Messages. I'm playing up at the Airlie Beach Festival in November, so I'm going to put aside 2 weeks after that to go up to Cairns. So I'll be there in November. But it'd have to be, because I've done the Tassie trip now, and I'm going back down for a pelagic in September. But yeah, it'd have to be somewhere where I really just be out of my comfort zone again, like far north Queensland. Something up there. I mean, I'd really love to see that Nordman's Greenshank if it comes back. I didn't get up for that, the last 3 years or something. It's been up there. I haven't been up for that. So if that comes back at the end of this year, that would be very cool. Maybe that. Yeah. I'll choose that.
Nice. Yeah. Well.
Yeah,
we'll definitely we'll definitely get in touch closer to that date so we can go out together and get some.
Book it in for me.
yes, for sure. Oh,
check
man.
with Nordy.
Yes. Check in with Nordy. All right, man. One last question, and maybe I'll twist it around a little bit.
Yeah.
Is because you seem very happy. Tell me if I'm wrong, but and very sort of content with Aussie birding.
Yep.
Do you have any plans or desires to kind of branch out and go overseas to any birding hotspot?
Yeah, I mean, I would go birding if I went overseas.
Mm.
Not at the moment. I don't think I would have any plans to like book a birding trip overseas. Like the first thing I would do if I did want to do that would be book a trip in Australia,
Mm.
like Cairns or up to Iron Range or
Mm.
WA or somewhere where I haven't really seen a lot of birds. There's still probably there's a good 500 birds probably still for me to see in Australia.
Mm.
I think my life list is like 440 or something. So yeah, there's a lot in Australia I still need to see. But I actually have been to New Zealand quite a few times and taken photos of birds that were just me with my camera taking photos of birds. I there's probably only a handful of them, but
Yeah.
I do have some overseas birds.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. I think if I went over to New Zealand again, I'd love to sort of revisit a few places I've already been. But so the question was, where is my overseas destination? Was it, or would I have somewhere to go overseas?
Yeah, pretty much either of those.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what
yeah.
what are your thoughts on like
Yeah.
overseas birding? Because it's
Yeah.
Australian birding is amazing. So, and some amazing Aussie birders
Yeah.
don't go overseas.
That's it. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's totally off the cards.
Mm.
There's a lot of cool birds that I would love to see. I'd love to see a toucan.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
love to see some of the raptors, some of the raptors from overseas, a hummingbird or a woodpecker, those sorts of things that we just don't have in Australia.
Yeah, that's right. That
Yeah.
is right. Yeah, back in Chile, we had both hummingbirds and woodpeckers.
Oh man,
so good.
cool.
Two
So
of my favorite families, woodpeckers
Oh, really?
especially. I love woodpeckers, but
Yeah.
we don't get them here. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's not fully off the cards, but yeah, it'd definitely be an Australia trip first. I still need to play catch ups.
Yeah, for sure, forever.
Yeah, wolf. Yeah. Oh no, at least give Australia a bit of a better crack. That's for sure.
Yeah. One last thought, which I wanted to loop back on. About 10 minutes ago, you mentioned this, and it really made sense to me. Is there's these rare species that we tell ourselves we're not going to see.
Yep.
That's true. That really is true. It's like, oh, I'm never going to see Regent honey either. What? Of course not.
Yep.
But like that, and when you see one, that's why you mentioned the disbelief. It's like, what? This is a Regent honeyeater. It can't be.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think that's true. It's lots of different birds can fit into that category. Like maybe the grey goshawk. It's like, oh, grey goshawk.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Or princess parrot.
Yeah.
Like things like that. It's like, I'm never going to see that. But like, it only needs to happen once.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Did you mean red goshawk?
Oh, red goshawk as well. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I've never seen a grey goshawk,
no.
man. So.
Okay. Damn. Well,
No. What am I saying? Grey falcon. What an idiot.
Oh,
I meant
falcon.
grey falcon.
No, you're forgiven that. Yeah.
Yes.
You're both grey.
yes. Grey falcon. Oh, that's embarrassing.
No, not at all. No, we fumble with their words. Yeah, I totally agree. I think, yeah, even just flicking through the bird guide, I've got the Australian bird guide, the blue book that everyone should have, and I flick through the pages often and just think, yeah, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. That would be amazing. And just look at all the birds. And I have seen quite a few of them. And like you said, it just gives so much more joy when you actually do see that, just knowing the rarity of it and knowing that there's people who have been birding 20 times longer than what I have that have still not seen them, think like I can't get on a pelagic without someone giving me shit about the Chatham albatross that they know I've seen that they haven't. It's, it's funny, but at the same time, I kind of feel like, I don't deserve it, but it's happened and it's amazing. So
yeah,
there's another element to it where, I agree with you. Yeah, it's crazy. I'm never going to see this, but you see it. It's crazy.
Yeah, those are the best moments. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, it's time to wrap up this episode. Thanks for agreeing to come on, and I mean, you messaged me, didn't you? So thank you.
I did, yeah. It's very cool. Yeah, thank you, man. And yeah, you're doing such a great job with the podcast. There's people like me that spend so much time on the highway that they want something to listen to, and it's just such great content. And I hope you just keep going with it. It's awesome. So congratulations, man. It's wicked. Thanks
so much. Thanks so much. I'll see you in Cairns in November.
You will. See you then.
See you, man. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, that was great. I can't believe that blunder at the end, man. Grey Gossel, what an idiot.